And now, The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
With Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA Corporate and Investment Banking, turning intent into execution. That's how ABSA are invested in Africa's energy future. 9 minutes after 6. Good evening. Welcome to The Money Show. I'm Stephen Grootes. I've been thinking a little bit about traffic over the last couple of weeks, partly because when I do the sort of morning school rush, it's been a little quieter in Joburg, and we know particularly in Joburg, but I think the same is true for Cape Town and many cities, in fact, that traffic is quieter in the winter and then gets a lot busier in the summer. And I think that's particularly true of Joburg. I remember December, January, the beginning of this year, January, February, a little bit of March, it just being unplayable. And Cape Town is trying to sort of deal with traffic, particularly in their CBD. They want to make parking more expensive and harder to find. They want to do all sorts of things. I mean, I do think that the evidence is pretty clear from cities around the world, where you have good public transport, you have fewer cars. We just don't really have that. If you want people to walk, which Cape Town wants to do, might work in Cape Town, a bit harder in Joburg for various reasons. Joburg is just more spread out. It's also hillier. I mean, if you're not wearing comfortable shoes, you're going to battle to walk far on Joburg streets. Never mind all of the pitfalls, potholes, and everything else that you're going to sort of run into. Where I live, when I take the dogs for a walk or whatever, just trying to stay on a pavement can become impossible, actually. And if you did, you'd soon find yourself up to your neck in sort of water pipes and things in some places. So there's a lot of work to do. I would like to ask you, though, do you have any idea of how much traffic costs you? Time, money, and I don't know how you're going to assess this for me, in your temper. Because I find sometimes when I get home, especially after the morning rush, I'm just like, wow, my mood is so different. Do you have any idea? I mean, I'd really like to hear from you. And any thoughts on sort of dealing with it on 072-702-1702. I think it's such an important thing, and it affects so many of us. We'll talk to Matshela Seshibe, the acting group CEO at South African Airways, in a moment. Big news from them about Emirates, Turkish Airlines, a lot happening that's changing there. Also, quite a difficult time to be running an airline. Look at high fuel prices. We'll ask Matshela about that. Lots of promises about transparency and what you pay for electricity. Some of them coming from the Electricity Minister, all through a cabinet document. There'll be more transparency in what you pay, and that should drive prices down. So really looking forward to that conversation as well. We will talk also about AI safety. Jamie Dimon's getting very worried about it. Arthur Goldstuck's been looking at that. We've seen computer systems being able to break out of their sandbox, if you like, and get into, all sorts of things, but into the internet and then hack into other systems. And then we'll talk a little bit more about crypto and what's happening with cross-border trading. The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA Corporate and Investment Banking, turning intent into execution. That's how ABSA are invested in Africa's energy future.
The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes, live on 92.7 and 106 FM, streaming on the Prime Media Plus app
and DSTV channel 856.
An announcement today, SAA and Emirates signing a proper code-share agreement, so you might one day book a flight on SAA to the Middle East and find yourself on an Emirates flight, or vice versa. Matshela Seshibe is the acting group CEO at SAA. Matshela, good evening. You've been working with Emirates quite closely for quite a long time. How's this new agreement going to work?
Thank you very much. Thanks, Stephen, and good evening to your listeners. The future of aviation is not going to be built by airlines operating alone. It's going to be about connecting airlines to connect people, markets, and opportunities. And we are excited, Stephen, about this partnership we are forging today with EK, Emirates. It's been going on for the last 29 years. It's a long-term relationship, and we are turning 30 together next year. This partnership expands the code share from a point-to-point partnership to a beyond partnership. So it extends now to routes beyond Johannesburg, where in the past it used to be between Joburg and Dubai. So a customer will buy one ticket, check in once, your luggage is checked through to your final destinations. It enables us then to have better connections and seamless travel and frictionless travel for our passengers.
I mean, there's a bit of history here, Matshela. I mean, long before I came to the Money Show and long before you came to SAA in 2015, if I remember, SAA was going to sign a similar deal with Emirates, and it was stopped at the last minute by the chair at the time, Dudu Myeni. I'm hoping none of that history got in the way of your negotiations this time?
I'm not aware of what happened in 2015. What I can say to you is that the current relationship between us and Emirates is strong. Both parties value the long-standing relationship. We built a relationship of trust, and we both see value in expanding this code-share partnership. That's why they will be putting their code on SAA aircraft for flights into Africa and locally, and we'll continue to do the same on the flights to Dubai from our own regional flights and also from our domestic flights as well.
Okay, look, I mean, I remember some of that relatively clearly. It came at the Zondo Commission, but I'm glad to hear it had nothing to do with your negotiations this time and didn't affect it in any way. You've been the interim CEO at SAA for, I think, 3 months now, Matshela. And look, I wouldn't want your job. I know it's a difficult job. There's a lot to contend with. Do you believe you're getting a handle on it? Are there particular problems that you can see you're going to have to prioritize dealing with for now? SAA's got a long history in South Africa. You had to stop operating for a while. I think many people, if just for nostalgia's sake, want it to work, but, you know, it can be complicated. Are there particular issues you can see you have to deal with?
We've had challenges this year. The biggest challenge that we faced this year has been the increase in jet fuel, which was caused by the war in the Middle East. That situation resulted in the price of jet fuel rising by 150% at its peak, imposing quite a heavy burden in terms of our fuel prices, causing us to even adjust some of our prices upwards. To ask passengers to participate with us in fending off the impact of that increase. Apart from that, we did note, I think a week or two into my tenure, I was in Parliament noting the challenges that SAA was facing and faced up to that point, particularly those that were raised by the Auditor General regarding the state of governance in the organization. So apart from growing the business, trying to run it sustainably and profitably, we are focused on governance to turn over every rock to ensure that we deal with procurement issues, we improve our standard operating processes, and make the airline sustainable.
So obviously higher fuel price is a big issue, and one of your rivals, FlySafair, they said that when they had to put their flight prices up because of fuel prices, demand dropped, they thought, by around 14% for flights. Did you see a similar drop-off?
Demand did take a dip and more so in the latter part after the full impact of the jet fuel increase had been baked in. The market has to be looked holistically, though. Despite the Middle East war, IATA does report that demand throughout Africa, which is where we operate as well, has remained relatively strong at 7%. Locally, in the last quarter, it flattened out as a result of the impact on the economy. And globally, except for the Middle East, demand for aviation continues to grow. So there are pockets of declines, especially domestically. There are pockets of growth outside of the country, and we will look to leverage where the opportunities are and to maximize or minimize the impact of where there are declines.
It must all be quite difficult to grow an airline in this environment when fuel prices are so high and also so variable. I mean, you and I both don't know where they'll be tomorrow.
Yeah, it's not easy. But I think everyone understands that the aviation industry does go through cycles. So this is one of those cycles that is created by external factors. We believe that this moment will pass. The underlying economics of aviation are strong. We have a lot of airlines that around the world that are still posting good profits. And we think that as the Middle East war is resolved, the fundamentals of the industry, as well as for SAA, will show, and they will show to be resilient and strong now to be the foundation for the next growth phase ahead.
Matshela Seshibe, thank you so much. Really do appreciate it. The acting group CEO at SAA, 19 minutes after 6.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes
On 702.
702.
More details are beginning to emerge about the new plans to change the way you are billed by your council for the electricity you use. Under the current system, your council bill probably tells you how much electricity you used and when you used it, and then they give you a bill. Now, under the new revised electricity pricing plan published by Cabinet, your council would have to tell you what the cost was for them to distribute the electricity, what the cost was to transmit the electricity, and what the cost was of administering all of that. There would also be a cap on how much a council could charge you because of electricity that was lost or stolen in the council system. That's referred to as a leakage, so this would be a leakage cap. Matthew Cruz is an energy analyst and a management committee member of the South African Independent Power Producers Association. Matthew, good evening. Okay, I'm scratching my head, literally. I mean, this seems like a big change. What new information would you and I get about what we're actually paying for?
Yes, well, thank you for having me on the show. It's good to chat with you and to your listeners. So this is a good step in the process that we're going through of unbundling Eskom and going towards a democratized energy sector. And part of what is now being implemented is a legislation that is like a front runner to the unbundling, and it provides certainty to the market on how the pricing policy will be approached. And something to notice here is that Eskom, as for direct customers, have previously added last year already additional line items that are similar to what we'll start seeing on the municipal and the council bills. One of them being a legacy charge. If you're a Eskom customer, you would have seen the legacy charge pitch up in your bill, and then also a generation capacity charge. And just to explain this quickly, that this is now the unbundled state of the cost-reflective aspect of the electricity delivered to you. And a legacy charge refers to the government independent power producer contracts that were entered into in the REAP rounds, and what those are costing Eskom. And then also the generation capacity charge is what we are paying for Eskom to have reserve power capacity available when it gets paid, when it's needed. So those are examples of what the unbundled tariff will look like now for municipality users. And this now does provide some clarity and some certainty to the independent power producers, of which I'm speaking now from being a management committee on SAIPPA. They've been waiting for this to see what is the money that will actually be able to be earned as revenue when we are providing this large amount of renewable energy to the grid and to Eskom and to municipalities. So it's a step in the right direction, and we have been anticipating this change, and it's good to see now that there's movement in this way.
There are all sorts of things. I mean, if you've had a billing system as we've had for a very long time, you have entrenched interests that grow up around it. So councils struggle to get everyone to pay for electricity. They know that they might lose, say, 20% of their electricity through leakage in the system. They charge you and I more to make up for that. Now there will be a cap. For the moment, I'm going to call it a leakage cap. They'll call it a leakage cap on how much they can charge me for that leakage. Now, is that system really going to work? Because councils have been relying on that extra money for years.
Yes. So I do suspect there's going to be pushback in terms of that cap and what that cap is. And I'm just imagining the narrative from businesses and households inside municipalities saying, why should I pay for the failures of the municipalities to maintain their grids and also ensure that there's not electricity theft? Why do I have to pay for my neighbor's electricity? Basically, that's the narrative that will be the pushback. And I do imagine, and from SAIPPA's perspective, we will be providing commentary on this. And just to note that it's been approved for the revised electricity pricing policy to be published from the government a week ago, but we have not received it as yet. So SAIPPA hasn't received it. I'm not seeing it anywhere online. So it's been approved to be published. And I think it'll be a very interesting, robust discussion that we can have when it is published and we've provided our feedback on it. Because this is one perspective that will be heavily pushed back against. And I suspect that government's going to have to come to the party on this. You can't just say municipalities ensure that you collect enough money to remain going concerns. Meanwhile, they've been mismanaged for the last 30 years. So I do suspect that the government will also then have, the national government will have to come to the party in order to assist local governments to roll this out.
So, I mean, so many things are going to happen now. And the councils, I mean, I can see the South African Local Government Association arguing strongly against these changes. As a general comment, though, the minister seems to be saying, and I know he's spoken elsewhere about this, he seems pretty confident that greater transparency will push prices down over the longer run. Now, as a principle, I think he must be right. But those who have something to hide, you're going to have to bring that transparency in, kicking and screaming.
Yes, there's an aspect of bringing the transparency from those that have something to hide, but also my mind goes to those that have something to hide would be the municipalities that have been mismanaged and have minimal capacity to actually comply with providing all of this transparency. Like, it's quite a process to go through putting together your cost of supply and understanding as a municipality what you can attribute to distribution versus technical losses versus maintaining your system versus electricity theft. So my mind goes to how will they actually get to the place where they can provide the information that's being required of them. And thankfully, the president did mention in last year's budget speech that there will be professional services that are provided to local governments in order to assist with the ring fencing, first of all, of the money that is collected, and then secondly, of the administration of electricity. And that talks to me of then actual national funding going to consultants that are provided to municipalities to provide them capacity to actually professionally roll this out. So, in terms of that does bring some hope of like, great, now there's going to be investments from the country into ensuring that there's less electricity theft and also that the municipalities can actually function in a sustainable and efficient way.
So, okay, this is, I suppose, the biggest change to electricity tariffs. I don't know, my memory doesn't go back far enough for this one, but a long time. It's going to affect councils in a fundamental way, probably not just councils. It will affect Eskom too in a fundamental way. If there's going to be opposition, Matthew, some lawyer somewhere is going to make a lot of money. This, I mean, just the court cases over this, we could be, I mean, I know the government says they want this sort of to move quickly, but we might actually be 5 years away.
Yes, that is good commentary, Stephen. And in terms of that, the country hopes that we can have this be a smooth path, that all stakeholders' opinions and positions are taken into account. However, unfortunately, like recently at the Wheeling conference that covers what is going on with the wheeling rules and the wheeling of independent power producer electricity throughout the country, every single commentator that I asked, what do you see the next 3 years looking like, was saying it's going to be a rough road, and that's now from the private sector. So if the private sector is saying, okay, it's going to be a rough road, then I can say we are going to have a bit of a tumultuous time for the next 3 to 5 years. But following that, hopefully, and this is the whole big plan, is that where we arrive at is a developed nation state, similar to Europe and America, where you do have competition bringing down the price of electricity, and that was envisioned in 1998 already from the government. So that's where we're going towards.
Matthew Grootes, thank you so much. Energy analyst and management committee member of the South African Independent Power Producer Association.
The Money Show.
The Markets.
Chris Stewart's portfolio manager at 91. Chris, good evening. Stronger fuel prices or more expensive fuel really helping Sasol out.
Yes, good evening, Stephen. We had a trading update from Sasol for their financial year-end ending 30 June with results out soon. And fairly, I think, predictable trading updates, guidance on headline earnings between 36 and 40 Rand a share. Market looking for something closer to the 40 Rand mark. Adjusted EBITDA, earnings before interest and tax, depreciation and amortization, talking to between 58 and 62 billion Rand. again, consensus somewhere within that range. So no big surprises, benefiting from a 4% increase in sales volumes over the period and significantly stronger Brent crude oil prices, up 7% in dollars, as well as significant improvement in refining margins. All of that supporting earnings, offset to a degree by a stronger rand against the dollar and some of the below-the-line financing effects, some of their mark-to-market on some of their derivatives, detracting a little bit from earnings. But generally speaking, the earnings numbers in line with the expectations. Customary impairments, as we have come to expect from Sasol, although I think the further markdown of the polyethylene unit within the chemicals business in South Africa, probably a little bit of a negative surprise. And the market, I guess, taking it in their stride. Oil price a little bit down today. Oil price quite heavily down overnight. And as a result of that, Sasol selling off a little bit.
Glencore, pretty much the same story. Oil and energy doing nicely for them.
Yeah, I guess Glencore, a very strong set of first half earnings numbers with their core earnings definition or their adjusted EBITDA measure of $10.1 billion. That's up 86% year on year. And their so-called marketing, which is effectively a trading business, their trading business having the second, I stand corrected here, but I think the second strongest 6-month period in their history, only ever stronger in the volatility when Russia first invaded the Ukraine. So $3.6 billion within that trading or marketing business, really benefiting from significant dislocations and volatility in energy markets as news flow has, caused the energy price to go up and down on almost unprecedented volatility. That's assisted that business. Also, they're a big business in copper, and copper has been buoyed over the period by the AI boom, copper being the key metal, if you like, in the AI rollout and the data center rollout. And coal, obviously, also benefiting from elevated energy prices over the period. So all of that causing a positive reaction from Glencore, talking to special dividends, further share buybacks, returning another $1.5 billion of capital to shareholders, talking to a secondary listing on the Australian Stock Exchange, which I think the market liked. And the only possible negative coming out of the trading update was talking to increased cost guidance for the second half, further cost inflation, which may put some of their operating businesses under a little bit of pressure from a margin perspective.
Chris Stewart, thanks so much. Portfolio manager at 91. A few seconds now after 6:30.
WhatsApp Stephen
on 072
702
1702.
22 minutes now to 7 the time. Just intrigued about your experiences of traffic at the moment. I mean, I make the point that Cape Town's trying to reduce traffic in their CBD. It's actually an incredibly hard thing to do without improving public transport. And the one place in Joburg you see, I can't really give you a scientific suggestion for this, but where you see middle-class people walking in Joburg is around the Gautrain station. And that's because it's public transport. It's become a node. You can go to work from there. You see it around other Gautrain stations too. You see it actually in Hatfield, in Tshwane. And so that tells you about the importance of public transport. Views coming through on 072 702 1702.
Hi, Stephen. On the subject of traffic, whether it's winter or summer, what is very evident is that the quality of driving in this town or in this country is absolutely pathetic.
Yep.
Drivers simply don't adhere to the rules of the road. The road has become a place where people express their anger. And they, said to say, the upbringing. And really, I also do the school run in it. And many times I've come into confrontation with people that just simply drive absolutely pathetic. I've just come back from a holiday as well, in a Central European country, well known. Huge population, huge traffic population. And guess what? The traffic discipline is second to none. And everything works. Robots work, drivers work. No confrontation, nothing of that sort. Yeah, it will take us generations to get to that place. Cheers. Faisal.
Yeah, Faisal, thank you. I mean, I hear, you know what I don't get is if you're going to drive badly, okay. If you just have to drive badly, You can indicate and drive badly. What's wrong with using an indicator? Why don't you? And the number of times it comes close to causing an accident or you lose a gap because you didn't know the person was indicating and therefore you couldn't take the gap. It drives me mad. And then when you hoot, and I'm sorry to say this, and I've said this before on this radio station, I always hoot and I always feel bad immediately afterwards. Like as one follows the other. Not always. Tolekele. But they look at you and like, why are you hooting? What's wrong with you? And then things, have the potential to escalate and you just feel, you get out of there. I mean, there was one person the other day that went around me, then through me, then stopped, and then kind of changed lanes right in front of me. I mean, when people do a bad thing, I have sometimes been known to just keep going. My poor daughter, I do feel for her. 19 minutes now to 7 the time.
702 with Stephen Grootes.
Email him on stephen@702.co.za.
14 minutes to 7. Let's move away from scary things like traffic and talk about scary things like AI. A report in the last 24 hours, the CEO at JP Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon, now looking at putting together an industry task force there to look at the risks associated with AI. And over the last couple of weeks, we've seen reports of AI models that were being tested in what's called a sandbox, basically an area where they would not be able to get into the internet. They've been able to break out of the sandbox. This is more than one, from more than one company. I suppose escape, if I can use that word, and get into the internet before hacking into other companies. Arthur Goldstuck is the CEO at Worldwide Works. Arthur, good evening. We seem to be in a situation where private companies, so for-profit companies, think, Elon Musk, OpenAI, Anthropic, they're testing these models in, it seems to me, any way they want, with no government regulation. I suppose government finds out about these breakouts when we do. How serious is this problem? I mean, it looks like the beginning of a pretty bad movie.
Good evening, Stephen. Yes, indeed. It doesn't get much scarier than this. And it also highlights the reason, or at least part of the motivation behind the U.S. government a couple of months ago banning Anthropic from giving access to their latest version of Mythos, which is their high-end, or was their high-end AI model, to anyone who was not American. Initially, in fact, they put a complete ban on its use, and then they declared that no one who is not an American can have access to it, which means no company could be given access, because, of course, there were many non-Americans working for American companies. So, in effect, they banned it. And a lot of people felt they were alarmist, but this kind of incident shows that that wasn't alarmist. That was actually a real concern about the dangers of letting this kind of tool loose. It was just a misguided kind of regulation that barred its use by certain people rather than trying to regulate what it could do or how it could be released. Now we're seeing standard testing of AI models, and not even at the cutting edge, allowing AI to go rogue, in effect, and attack websites beyond the system that's being tested.
Would governments really be able to control or regulate this kind of testing, even if they wanted to? Even the US government, would they actually be able to do that?
It's one very simple mechanism that they can use, and that is to slap massive fines on any AI company that allows something like this to happen. You can bet your bottom dollar and your top dollar that they will then focus very heavily on ensuring that their models and the AI agents are kept under control.
Okay, and the companies themselves. So it seems to me the one thing that these cases have in common is that the AI programs they were working on were actually cybersecurity programs. Their job essentially was, when they were going to be released, was to try and find weaknesses in cybersecurity. Now that's a good thing. I understand why you'd want to do that. But then the way in which they've been tested is clearly too weak. To put it in the sort of vernacular, the sandbox was too weak, or the box around the sandbox, or whatever. The fence didn't work, right? Now, would you be able to have a government system that says this is what your fence needs to look like?
Very much so, because the OpenAI and the Anthropic accidental, I'm not sure if they were accidental, I think the creators were delighted, but the accidental hacking incidents suggest that there were failures at several levels. Firstly, in the testing environment, where any exercise aimed at a simulated target shouldn't have any kind of route out of that system or into the real world. And second, and far more significant than that, is that with increasingly capable models and tools emerging, their freedom to conduct what you might call multi-step operations without restricting their autonomy or their independence is simply recklessness. So that kind of unlimited autonomy will eventually be at the disposal of organizations that are dealing with consumers and businesses, where a single security mistake can become a disastrous attack. And it's not even hackers that will be behind the attack. It'll be the AI itself thinking that this is the best way to achieve the goal that has been set, because that's in effect what the AI is doing. It's not sentient, it's not malicious. It simply is looking for the best way to achieve the goal that its owners or creators or managers gave it.
I can't help but feel you've put your finger on the major problem when you say that the designers would have actually been very pleased, because I think you're right. And where I'm going to is, I don't know if the people who run the companies, I mean, let's think about who some of these people are well motivated enough to protect us from what they're trying to do. All they want to do is have the next best model to get more money. That's what it looks like to me, sitting here in Johannesburg, far away from it all.
That's definitely part of the story. The interesting thing is that a lot of the AI companies are calling on government to regulate the AI companies themselves and stop them from advancing so fast. It's because they themselves feel that they are trapped on this treadmill where they have to keep advancing, or otherwise the opposition will advance beyond them and they'll fall behind. We're already seeing Anthropic with Claude surpassing OpenAI in the amount of enterprises using it. So that means OpenAI now has an incentive to show that they can do better than Claude. And they are going to try to bring out models that can be even more dangerous than Anthropic's. It's the Anthropic models that have been causing most of the trouble. OpenAI would love to be seen to be causing that trouble, because it means people will flock to them for the most advanced AI models.
Arthur Goldstuck, thanks so much. CEO of Worldwide Works. What would you rather talk about, AI or traffic?
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA Corporate and Investment Banking, turning intent into execution. That's how ABSA are invested in Africa's energy future.
Well, you may remember last week, the National Treasury and the Reserve Bank publishing their latest proposals to manage the flow of money through cryptocurrencies into and out of the country. Some people in the crypto industry have been very critical of the first proposals. These are sort of the second draft, I suppose. But essentially, it would mean cryptocurrencies are treated in the same way as ordinary cash flowing across borders through bank accounts. Natalie Scott is a director at Worksman's Attorneys. Natalie, good evening, and thanks for your time. I mean, this would be quite a big change for the crypto industry. What regulations would there be to manage these flows of money across borders?
Stephen, this is a significant departure from where we are currently in terms of what actually regulates the crypto asset service providers. The founding legislation here would be the Currency and Exchanges Act and the regulations that are published under those acts. Now, we saw earlier this year that there were draft regulations, exchange control regulations called the Capital Flow Management Regulations, and now the draft manual for crypto asset cross-border transfers has been published, and those two then need to be read together. So the compliance burden is going to be significant for any CASPs that are currently in the market.
Okay, so they'll have to do a lot more, I would say paperwork, but I'm sure it'll be online. They'll have to do a lot more than they did before. Is that going to in some way push up the cost? I mean, crypto is designed to be frictionless and will no longer be frictionless.
Oh, absolutely, because they will have significant reporting obligations on a daily basis, as well as an enhanced FICA requirements, KYC requirements. They've got capital adequacy requirements, so they have to hold capital. It has to be readily available. So that capital has to be in cash. It can't be encumbered. So there are significant costs and compliance costs that will definitely be imposed on in terms of the new regime for the authorized CASPs. Yeah.
For the end user, so if you're a South African and you get some money from another country and you're on a banking app, which most of us are, and you get a Forex payment, you can all in one sort of go in about a minute or so, sort of accept the payment, accept a quote for the Forex, give it a reporting code, I think it is, for the Reserve Bank. You can basically do all of that in about a minute. And the bank reports it. They obviously take a fee at some point, and the money pops into your account. For the end user on crypto, would it work in the same way?
Theoretically, yes, except in this instance, the authorized dealer, which is the role that the bank plays in your example, would be your crypto asset service provider. They would have the reporting requirements. And then any cash that potentially flows into your bank account would then also be reported on by your authorized dealer in the ordinary course. So yes, it would be pretty much the same, but there would be in the current scenario or the envisaged scenario, there would be a double reporting requirement. So they would track and trace on both levels, both through the authorized CASP and through your bank.
I was interested that only natural persons, so people, could do this. Companies and trusts would not be able to do this. Isn't that different from how normal cash is managed?
Yes, in terms of cash, it is different. However, the classification of crypto assets as capital is what is the difference in the current scenario. So the current exchange control regulations impose capital controls on the export of capital. There are reporting requirements, obviously, to the extent that capital is imported into South Africa, far less stringent, obviously. It's good for the fiscus. But I think in terms of where they're going with this, they are bringing crypto assets very clearly within the exchange control framework and managing it as if it were and classifying it as capital.
Okay. But, I mean, if a company wanted to bring in R1 million, they would be able to do that as cash, but they won't be able to do that in crypto.
Correct. They won't be able to do that.
Isn't that quite limiting? I mean, I'm no expert on this stuff, as you can hear, but I can't quite understand why not. Poor company.
Yeah, it is very limited. I think there may be scenarios and situations where there could potentially be an application that is made via the authorized CASP to the Reserve Bank to authorize and to approve the inflow of crypto assets. I think you would need to give a rationale, the underlying obligation that this is to satisfy and why the money is coming in. So the concern there would also be obviously illicit flows, any unlawful receipts of monies, potentially your AML concerns. So under those circumstances, there are greater controls in respect of crypto assets and anything that falls within the definition of crypto assets. So it's much broader than just cryptocurrency. It's any asset that qualifies within the crypto asset stable.
Okay. I mean, I'm not sure if a court is going to find that is, what's the phrase, irrational.
Oh, gosh, yes. Our regulators are known to be rational generally. I think what's happened here is that there has obviously been some cause for concern in relation to trading of crypto assets somewhere along the line that we may or may not have been appraised of. And in that regard, they're looking to bring this within the framework to ensure that, capital remains in South Africa and to strengthen exchange control regulations and to make sure that it's covered. I think the initial understanding was probably that they did automatically fall within the existing exchange control regulations, but that has been challenged. And on that basis, the Reserve Bank and National Treasury have come out and said, right, we're now going to make it exceptionally clear to everybody that this does fall within our control, within our remit.
Okay, I'm going to look to see how it pans out. We're already late for news, Natalie, but I have to ask everybody involved in this. Is it really going to be possible to enforce these? Because crypto is crypto.
Yeah, so agreed. I think it is going to be difficult. I think the borders are going to be where they're going to catch it. In terms of entering and exiting South Africa, there will be declarations that need to be made. Companies will need to give declarations as to their crypto asset holdings. And so I think they might not be able to track and trace it on the actual rails themselves, but they will catch you on a fraudulent non-disclosure or negligent non-disclosure, and that's a criminal offence. You can go to jail.
Natalie Scott, thank you so much. Director at Worksman's Attorneys, just after 7 o'clock.
And now, The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA Corporate and Investment Banking, turning intent into execution. That's how ABSA are invested in Africa's energy future. 9 minutes after 7. Plenty to come in the next little while. We'll talk about family-run businesses with Advita Naidu in just a moment. I have to say, I am not... I mean, I've never worked for a family-run business. My brothers and I have very divergent interests. I wonder what it would be like to be sort of joining a family-run business as an employee and thinking, I can never be CEO because I'm not part of the family. That, for me, would sort of stick around a little bit. So, I mean, there's that. But some of them, they endure, hey? They go forever and ever and ever. And, I mean, well done to them in all sorts of ways. We'll talk to Advita just now. Lee Sobrati is the Ombud for Consumer Goods and Services, the Consumer Goods and Services Ombudsman. And they've got a big report out around what is really affecting and what they're getting complaints about. Online shopping. Are you surprised? More than a quarter of their complaints come from that sector. And then your shapeshifter tonight, Nonko Peche, the CEO at Discovery Corporate and Employee Benefits, and in fact the inaugural CEO there on her journey. I have a couple of questions as well about the challenges that are faced by this generation of women in corporate. Have the challenges changed from the sort of first and second generations? What do you think it's going to be like for our daughters? I think that's going to be a part of the conversation. So really looking forward to that. Good to hear from you as well tonight on 011 883 0702 021 446 0567, and of course voice notes on 072 702 1702.
WhatsApp Stephen
on 072
702
1702.
Well, traffic. Surprise, surprise. Lots of thoughts, advice and stories for us tonight.
Good evening, Stephen. You know what? In South Africa, we just can't drive. I mean, on the highway, what happened to keep left, pass right? So everyone wants to drive on the fast lane. If you want to get where you want to get faster, just keep left. Because everyone is driving on the fast lane. They don't even think that's where you need to give space for emergency vehicles like police or ambulances. No, everyone's driving on the fast lane. I don't know. Yeah, that's South Africa for you.
I don't know either, eh? Gee, really? I think there's so many, sort of thoughts about it. More thoughts tonight.
Evening, Stephen. Mpo here. Stephen, I know this is a very serious topic, but I just want to throw this in the spanner. We all say that everybody's a bad driver in this country. All of us. Every driver says everybody's a bad driver, but then we are all part of the problem. Like your listener just said, Europe. Like he just likes Western culture. But trust me, people who have traveled will tell you that, yes, things work abroad, but in terms of people's behavior, it's the same everywhere in the world. It's the same everywhere in the world.
And Paul, thanks. Yeah, I think you're right. We all say we're all bad drivers. Well, that's because, a little bit of looking in the rearview mirror. Well, careful, 13 after 7.
The Money Show.
Business Unusual.
I'm sure you've seen many companies, sometimes quite small firms, where you'll see many of the people who run it are related to each other. I mean, just driving around Joburg, I'll often see estate agents who are clearly mother and daughter, or, fathers and sons who are running a plumbing or electricity business or something like that. There's some bigger companies that have done that. Bell Equipment, started by the Bell family, Pick and Pay and the Ackermans. Advita Naidu is the Africa Managing Director at Jack Hammer Global. Advita, good evening. I mean, quite a few family businesses. They're not massive. They're not necessarily on the JSE, but they're around. They've been around for a long time. are they actually quite a big part of our economy?
They are, I think, probably much bigger than a lot of people think. And obviously we focus on the listed names because they're visible, but a huge amount of South Africa's economy sits in businesses that prefer not to be public. They're manufacturing, agriculture, logistics, retail, lots of them third or fourth generation even, not just, mothers and daughters. They employ hundreds of people. Some of them anchor entire towns, which is amazing to see. It's these kind of like microeconomies. And I think what's really interesting about these businesses is that they're under no obligation to professionalize. Nobody's forcing any kind of transparency on them. So all the leadership decisions they make, they're entirely self-imposed. And the ones who choose good governance early, before they're forced to, are usually the ones that are standing 3 generations later, and they're so fascinating.
Succession planning is a big thing for bigger companies. With families, there's the famous sort of TV drama Succession, which is all very dramatic. But, is succession an issue in family-run businesses? Do they have a plan that could often break down?
Yeah, look, I think as within corporates, the plan exists on paper, or it's like a bullet point in the annual strat agenda, but sometimes it's not being tested properly. Nobody's asked the assumed successor, first of all, if they actually want it, or even benchmark them against somebody else who might be equally capable. Everyone kind of like bobs along until some kind of health scare or an unsurprisingly, but apparently shocking retirement forces the question. And by then, some businesses are making the decision under pressure instead of by design. And, we work with a lot of clients who do treat succession like an annual audit. They sit down every year and they genuinely ask, is this still the right plan? Is this still the right person? Some families do that, some don't. And it's such a simple thing to build in.
Sure. Is there a practical difference between a family business that professionalizes sort of early and one that waits a bit? Sometimes one that waits a bit might just keep a little bit more of the original soul.
Yes, I think that's really a great point. The soul and the values that make it what it is. But I think the early movers do it from a position of strength. The governance, the outside leadership that they bring in while things are going well, they become additive, not corrective. But sometimes the ones who wait do it might do it under duress. Like I said, it could be a health scare. It could be a bad year. It could be a sibling conflict that's spilled into the business, and those happen. And then it's political and defensive, and it's not strategic. And anyone walking in is walking into a much harder job to do. They could be a referee to a dispute and not there to lead.
Does having a board help? And I'm reminded, I think it's Thirsty, the drinking water company. If you look at their board, I think 2/3 of the board all have the same surname. And there's sort of one person who doesn't, who's the chair, who's clearly playing referee.
Yeah. They do, and I think there are a lot of companies that have independent directors with real relevant expertise. They're not just friends of the family. They're not there to keep the peace. And a board that's actually allowed to disagree with the founder or the second generation and does, they give them regular substantive interrogation of strategy and not just a once-a-year governance like tick box exercise. Those are the ones who are really asking the hard questions. And it's a strange thing to say, but I think the healthiest boards we work with are the ones where meetings get uncomfortable and somebody's pushing the boundaries a little bit.
Are there some good examples of, companies that have done this well? Are there some cautionary tales maybe of companies that haven't actually done this well at all?
Yeah, look, I think the ones who are doing it well are the ones who, like I said, are bringing in members, outside members sooner rather than later. The bigger crises are the ones where they delay, they wait until a crisis forces the decision instead of choosing the timing themselves. And again, that's not a strategic hire. And I think there are some instances where family members aren't acting in community. They want to make their mark and be the individuals who took good to great, really. And whether it's a family unit or a family business or even a corporate business, let's be honest, there should be no superstars, even if grandpa does have a favorite.
Yeah, it's so interesting to watch. I would like to think that the way in which family businesses are run, it can't really be codified. Every family is different. So is every business.
That's exactly it. Every business is different, and it's never a one-size-fits-all. But I think as long as you're asking the strategic questions, is this still serving the vision that we want to achieve with the people that we have around the table and with the strategy that we've chosen as a family? If you're pressure testing those assumptions and finding that it's not really serving the purpose, then it's time to make a change.
Advita Naidu, thanks very much indeed. The African Managing Director at Jack Hammer Global. Really appreciate it. 18 minutes after 7.
7:02.
7:02.
Stephen is on The Money Show.
6 to 8 p.m.
The Consumer Goods and Services Ombudsman, Lee Sobrati, saying they're still getting more complaints about online shopping outlets than other sectors. In other words, there also seem to be some weaknesses, in fact, in our laws that are supposed to protect consumers. Well, the Ombud, Lee Sobrati, is on the line for you now. Lee, good evening, and thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Over 1/4 of your complaints are about online shopping. Is this a consistent figure?
Good evening to you and the listeners. Thank you for having us on the show. So when we talk about e-commerce, and I think e-commerce has been something that has been increasing year on year since, as we go back to COVID 2020. At that time, we saw a 66% increase in that year in e-commerce transactions, I think, across the globe, and let alone South Africa. At the CGSO specifically in that year, we jumped from just 2% in e-commerce in 2020 to 35% just 6 months later. So the trend is definitely there. Currently, it is it is getting a bit more consistent in terms of the year-to-year figure. But yes, to answer your questions, I think we are now dealing with the digital consumer. We're dealing with consumers who are engaging on multiple platforms, but I think e-commerce is here to stay. And I think it's validly expected that the complaints or highest categories contributing to complaints will fall within the e-commerce and online transaction space.
Some people dominate that space in certain categories. Do you see a lot of repeat offenders? Is a high proportion of these complaints coming from one or two or three of the companies?
Yeah, when we're dealing with online, especially with online platforms, and a lot of the platforms, if we have to do a count, there's not that many number of large platforms, especially operating within the borders of South Africa. So it's quite natural that if a high percentage of e-commerce complaints are coming in, it's accepted that it would be contributed due to those specific suppliers. However, and this is something that we see, especially in the Ombud space, a complaint doesn't necessarily mean that there's something untoward. Of course, every case is particular in terms of its own sort of circumstances. However, of course, what we are seeing is that when we do see repetitive behaviors or we see action that is questionable, we do engage with these larger platforms to ensure that they either change their business processes, their online terms and conditions, etc. But what you will actually find is that we have been finding 64% in favor of consumers, which means that there is still quite a large or substantial portion that's actually being found against the consumer. So I think for now, the scales are more or less balanced in terms of, I would say, prohibited conduct versus actual outcomes or solutions being resolved for consumers.
And when you try and speak to these companies, do they sort of sit up and listen? Do they respond to what you tell them?
Yeah, that's one of the benefits and one of the privileges of signing up and complying with the Consumer Goods and Services Ombud. I guess for the longest while, there's been a perception that one has the option to sign up and participate. The Consumer Goods and Services Industry Code is compulsory for every service provider or supplier. And what we do find is that when we do engage with these suppliers, go back, they look at their business processes, they look at the trend and the analysis, and what we find is even though the number of complaints may not drop, but the probability of finding in favor of the consumer will then obviously decrease in proportion to those steps taken by the supplier to correct their processes. So we do see a concerted attempt to resolve and make the system sustainable and compliant with the CPA.
We've seen consumer rights being strengthened over the years. Are there still weaknesses in the Act? Are there still weaknesses that you can see where maybe you have to rule against the consumer because of what the law says, when actually you think, that's not just? Do you see some areas of our law that still need tightening?
Yeah, if we look at the two main pieces of legislation, and this is in addition to the Constitution and any other operation of law, but primarily we use the Consumer Protection Act, which was promulgated, I would say, about 15 years ago. We have the Electronic Communications and Transactions Act, which is from 2002. Now, if one does a calculation on the number of years that have passed since, and you scale that by the emergence of technologies and emerging technologies, it's quite clear to say that we no longer can just rely on what the letter of the law says. We have to apply innovative ways and filling those gaps. And that is where I think the consumer ombuds, both MIOSA as well as the CGSO, we have the ability to make recommendations, which means that we can suggest solutions that sometimes, push the boundaries of what the legislation requires, but also balancing the principles of fairness, justice, and, essentially what would the reasonable person do? So, yes, the legislation does require attention. In fact, the CGSO has worked with the National Consumer Commission and the DTIC, the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, and we released a paper earlier this year calling for reform specifically addressing this point on what we're seeing on the ground as gaps and our suggestions on what should be done in order to close those gaps. So the conversation is definitely happening, and we hope that it'll start to gain traction sooner rather than later.
No, sure. I mean, there's a lot that's sort of changing in this area. At some point, the move towards consumers probably comes to an end, and it might start to move back a little bit. I mean, as things stand now, are things kind of balanced in sort of roughly the right place? Or do you think that still the companies have a bit too much power?
I think we have a lot to do as institutions, as stakeholders in our various platforms that we sit. And I think ultimately, the power lies in the hand of the consumer. A better informed consumer and, in fact, a better informed supplier makes for a sustainable environment. But I mean, we've seen in the recent 24 months with the emergence of these technologies, where we used to have lay-bys in the past, now we have things like buy now, pay later. So we are dealing with, I would say, quite novel and different, or rather new concepts, and we have to grapple with this with the legislation that we have. But ultimately, I think everybody has a part to play, which is why we have expanded our consumer education efforts to ensure that every consumer should be asking minimum questions before concluding a transaction. Things like, what are my rights in terms of a dispute? What are my rights of return? When can I request a refund, especially when it comes to online transactions? I think we as consumers, we're so used to this instantaneous way of thinking. I can buy it now instantly. It arrives at my door an hour later without sometimes thinking through the consequences if something goes wrong. So I think it's something we have to reflect on. But to answer your question, I don't think we'll ever get there in the current space we're in, but we are trying our best to make sure that we get as far ahead as possible, and that can only come through concerted efforts on consumer education and holding suppliers and consumers to a certain extent liable and accountable to a certain degree.
Lee Sobrati, I really appreciate the time. Thank you so much. The Consumer Goods and Services Ombudsman.
The Money Show.
Shapeshifters.
25 minutes now to 8 the time. Well, tonight we're speaking to someone who's actually had to be the inaugural CEO of a department in a major company. Her name is Nonku Piche, the inaugural CEO of Discovery Corporate and Employee Benefits, and she's sitting with me now. Nonku, good evening, and thanks so much for coming in. I really appreciate it. I know you've had a busy day, and I'm sure another 2 more to come, so thanks for taking the time.
It's so fabulous to be here. Thanks, Stephen.
You were part of an established group, Discovery. It feels like it's been around for ages, but actually isn't that old at all. And then you had to form a new company within the group, and you were its first CEO. So it's one thing, I think, the journey of starting a new company from scratch. It's one thing to take over a company from scratch. But to run a big new department in one of South Africa's big corporates, that's something I've never got to talk about before. What was that experience like?
It's actually been an incredibly, I think, one humbling, but also building experience. So actually, even though I'm the inaugural CEO, what really happened is that we had a few divisions that focused on the employer, sort of B2B. We brought them all together, and under this umbrella of Discovery Corporate and Employee Benefits, we've got this new opportunity to impact lives and to help employers help their employees. So it's actually been a really one humbling, one building, but also just an exhilarating journey so far. I've absolutely loved it.
Often the first boss of something sets structure and a tone that actually endures for a long time, much more than the second bosses sometimes.
Yes.
Were you very conscious of that?
Extremely conscious. I mean, for me, there were probably 3 components that I looked at. First was people. I mean, you can do nothing without having a great team around you. So first focused on my exco, and then the broader business and how we make sure we can build this together and the sense of a purpose, direction together. The second was very clear strategic objectives. What are we here to do? What does impact look like? What does success look like? And the third was actually getting the rubber to hit the tar. It's lovely to be the inaugural, help me with this word.
It's a silly word.
But you don't want to be the one that is not successful within the group. And I'm also mindful of, I'm a woman in corporate South Africa. I'm the only woman CEO within the South African composite. And I'm also a black only woman CEO in the South African composite. So I felt a lot of responsibility around ensuring that not only am I bringing the people together, having clear strategic objectives, but actually make sure that you deliver what you promise to deliver and that business is successful.
So there's a lot going on, and you are starting a new division, and it's got to be part of a much bigger identity. Discovery is a big identity. I mean, a big identity in middle class South Africa. But you also want to be not too distinct, but slightly distinct. You want the people in the office to know, that one works at, corporate wellness. Was that a bit tricky?
Not at all. Firstly, I think my appointment was such a shift for the business. And I often say I didn't have time to be excited. I mean, I was super energized.
No, I'm sure.
But I actually just felt a sense of such importance to do this right and to show up in the right way. But it was so distinct because there was only one of Nonku. It's only one Nonku PJ. I often say in our board meeting, on my right-hand side is my colleague, Kenny, and on my left-hand side is my colleague, Rian. One is from Invest, one is from Life, and then Nonku in the middle. And by the virtue that I was the first, especially the first woman, I actually just I have to walk the road of making sure that I'm doing the job I'm meant to do, that I bring people along with me, that I elevate the business, and that I actually make an impact with the team that I work with. So actually, the fact that I walk in high heels is quite different in itself. But also, I'm quite present. I'm quite in touch. I want people to feel seen and valued. I take a big, it's important to me as I walk the floors that I greet everyone. They feel seen. They feel valued. It's a very important thing to me. And that in itself has made me different, has made me stand out. And it's actually authentically who I am.
I mean, it's amazing. I think, just speaking to different people in corporate, I mean, look around, this is as corporate as I've ever got. But I do think there's been a much greater acceptance of how to treat people in corporates over the last 20 years. They can still be quite brutal places, and probably always will be. It's the nature of them. But they're making sure that someone feels seen. It's a big culture shift in a lot of places over the last 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, definitely. I must say, I'm very lucky that I work in a business where two of our values pertain to people, liberating the best in our people and having the best people. And so we've always been quite deliberate about people. In fact, we have something we call Discovery Day. And Discovery Day is actually a week. And this year we named it D92 because the business was founded in 1992. But that week is all about our people. We take what we launch to our clients, we customize it, we amplify it, and then we launch it to our people. So it's a whole week of celebrating our people, who they are, the value. We've got something within the business that we call Star Awards, which is really a recognition of brilliant people doing brilliant things, and we reward them in a brilliant way. They go on these excursions overseas that are unbelievable. But I think the recognition that people make or break your business, we don't sell a tangible product. We don't sell water, Valpre. You actually sell security when people need it the most. So within the health business is probably the most palpable, where if somebody is going through something significant, oncology, cancer, and you can hold their hand, you can pay a claim, that is power. And that you do only through people. So I think we do quite a lot in making sure that we see and we value our people. Can we do more? Of course we can do more. But it's really intrinsic for us and very centered in everything that we do.
You spend a lot of time at Discovery Health.
Indeed.
And there are probably very few jobs in Sandton that touch as many people directly as a medical aid of that size. I forget what proportion it is of the market. But
almost 60% of the market.
60%. So when you're involved in a company like that, the consequences of mistakes or the consequences of a decision that's maybe motivated in the wrong way or for the wrong thing are huge. Did you ever find that, almost daunting or just something quite different to other corporate space?
Yeah, I must say, Discovery Health, I would call for myself the best university you could have gone to in terms of learning many dimensions of business, not only, I guess, dealing, to your point, with consequences of some of the things that go wrong, because things can go wrong, but when they do, it is really tangible and palpable and really hard on people. But to be honest, I don't think the approach is ever fear, because there's a sense of optimism and we are always trying to do the right thing. The purpose of our business is one, for me, that will stand the test of time, to make people healthier, enhance and protect their lives. I mean, that is the core of what we do. And so for us, always, and I mean, trust me, when I worked in the Discovery Health business, there were lots of complexities sometimes with the regulator, sometimes getting something fundamentally wrong with clients, etc. But it was never daunting. It was, can we do better and what is better? And one of the best examples, Stephen, for me was just how we showed up during COVID. You know, you took something that was so stressful for the country, for the nation, stressful globally, and we took that and we found the opportunity to play such a significant role because of who we were. We turned our whole office into the biggest vaccination center in the country, amongst other things. But that, I think, shows that many things can go wrong. That was one of the biggest things that went wrong for the world, not just for us. But how we step into it and step through it. And you've seen some obviously recent ones. But again, I think what is admirable is coming to the fore, admitting what's happened, and then doing something that's right.
So you were, for a while, the primary growth officer at Discovery Health, and you launched several new products. Now, if you say to me, let's talk medical aid, I'm going to because it's just so blooming complicated. And like, I don't care. Does my broker think it's okay? Yes, tick. Okay, next. So now when you're trying to launch new products into an audience that is sort of tired of it in a way, we all understand it's important. How difficult is that to do? Because you've got to grab attention in an important and careful way.
I have to be honest, it was one of my most energizing roles. We called it new markets because it was trying to open up and diversify into new markets. And primary health in particular was something that was giving some kind of health care and access to healthcare to employees that have no cover. They go to work every day. They work for big employers in certain cases, but not all employers can provide medical aid. So it was a new segment, much cheaper, much more affordable. And I had never been so energized. I was very clear. We're going to give 1 million more people healthcare cover. The market has always been sort of around that 8 million mark, and for so long. But you've got the mother, and you can see my passion is because I have an aunt and I have a cousin and I have who have to line up at clinics. So if we're able to just shift the dial and at a fraction of the price, give certainty to someone who says, my child is sick, but I need to get to the office. Can I get to a GP? So the kind of energy and passion that I had meant that the design of the product, the pricing of the product, the iteration of the product. I used to go out. I didn't leave selling to just our distribution team. I was on the road. And I think all players, not just Discovery, who've contributed in the space have done the most incredible thing. So I think, you know, when you get to as old as I am, you have seen many things. One of the things you've seen is if you have your health, if you don't have your health, you have nothing. You think you have many problems until you have a real health problem. Then all the other problems dissipate and go into the background. So because we come from the space, we see all sorts of things that sort of happen. When this came about for me, it was like it's an opportunity to just do magic and to go into a new and different part of our business and grow it. And it has grown significantly. It's got a new leader now who's also doing an incredible job. But actually from having nothing there to almost having 500,000 people having these different new products is incredible in a very short period of time.
I want to go back a little bit because you started in management consulting.
That's correct.
That's not something I was going to do. And in fact, you went into the energy sector. Now, I'm guessing was this pre-load shedding?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I
didn't know that word when I went into at the time.
I mean, if load shedding had happened, you might well have stayed in it because there would have been so much opportunity. But to move from energy to medical aid, you have to explain that one to me, Nong.
The truth is, management consulting is so diverse. You just happen to be put where you put. You know, I was completely green, coming from university, completely naive, optimistic. The world was at my feet and everything was possible. And I just got put into energy. So I went to every power station. I can tell you power stations backwards. I lived in small little towns. I was at Tutuga and Duva, etc., including actually Megawatt Park was a place that I worked a lot. But the truth is what you do is offer solutions. They were implementing a big system solution and the processes that came with it in order to create efficiencies in the business, etc. And what it did for me, actually, it taught me to be completely change agile. Things are not scary because if you can go to a place like that in an industry you don't understand, speak to engineers, work in a power station in order to deliver whatever the solution is, where else can you work? So I've never been daunted around, is it medical aid? I've actually moved to where the business has asked me to go. Even within Discovery, I probably in the 20 years I've been there have had 7 to 8 jobs.
Yeah.
And they've been quite diverse. You can see now I'm in retirement funds and group life cover, and I'm loving it. And I think that's the muscle that a management consulting background gives you.
It's your shapeshifter on The Money Show, Nonku Peche, the CEO of Discovery Corporate and Employee Benefits, with us for a few more moments. It's 11 minutes now to 8.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA Corporate and Investment Banking, turning intent into execution. That's how ABSA are invested in Africa's energy future.
The Money Show.
Shapeshifters.
Your shapeshifter tonight, Nonku Peche, the CEO at Discovery Corporate and Employee Benefits. Nonku, you are among the second or maybe the third generation, depending, of women leaders in corporate, particularly black women leaders in corporate. Do you think the challenges, problems, difficulties, have they changed since that first generation started to come through in sort of the 90s?
Sure, Stephen, I just feel like we have to do so much more. I feel like there were trailblazers, but there were so few that it didn't become embedded in the fiber and the fabric of what is business as usual. I feel there's so much more, and role modeling is such a powerful way to change things. If people are not seeing enough of us doing the thing, how do you believe you can reach it and do it yourself? So I think there's so much more for us to do.
Is this something that companies need to, is it, people who look like me need to spend more time thinking about? Where does it come from?
What is incredible is that I think companies together or supported by legislation have had to walk a road, and companies have. But I also think that there's a lot more to do, and you're right, people like you. So, male leaders in organizations. I know my career was sponsored a lot by male leaders in organizations. I probably would not be where I am without having that. But I think it has to be deliberate. I don't think it can happen through magic. At Discovery, we have what we call Discovery Women Move, which was a platform by women for women, because actually women, while there's been a lot of change, we're not seeing or hearing the dialogue. And you actually have to make it visible, and you have to make it almost tangible for people to see it. You've got to publish it, you've got to have things happen, and you've got to be deliberate around where you want the change to happen. In our business, there's been a huge amount of change. 60% of people that work at Discovery are women, so that change has happened. At multiple levels, from staff level to sort of middle management, there's been a lot of change. At that top tier is where we need more work to be done. And actually, when we had Discovery Women Move, was around, can we support more inclusion and growth in that top tier level? And for me, in fact, I should tell you the story. I brought my girls to work. We were having a big roadshow. We were really delivering to the business and telling them what we've done in the last sort of 6 months of performance. And we're thanking the business and really just outlining the strategic objectives. And I brought them to work. And it's such an important thing for me that they see. Yeah. Because, they've got a very successful dad as well. He is actually a business owner, and therefore, it's easy to talk about that. And in my team, we've got a few women, and I knew they were going to be on stage. So they came to work. And, for the first time, my little one, I asked her what she wants to do. She's always wanted to be an actuary. She loves mathematics. So, yeah, it's very weird. But because I'm surrounded by actuaries, I'm like, bring it. But, she said, I want to be an actuary. And then we're going through her subject selection. I was like, but Lelo, all of the stuff will allow you to, but what do you really want to do? And you know what she said? Tears in my eyes. She says, Mommy, I want to do what you do. I don't even think she had languaging for it. But all she had done was in like 2 weeks prior, had seen me and other women be on stage be part of an executive committee, delivering a sort of a strategic talk around where the business is going, and then you see the shift. And so you just need more people, more women, and then more women will aspire. They'll do much more than us, but we just don't have enough.
So, I mean, I have a teenage daughter too, as you know. What do you think we can do to prepare them for what may be the challenges they face? So I'm hoping that by then things will be more representative, or whatever the right word is. But do you think there are going to be particular things that we can predict now will be an issue?
100%. So I work with money, in money, and the protection of people from an insurance perspective. One of the things that I have learned in working in this part of the business is that a lot of the stuff is structural.
Yeah.
We actually have to fix it structurally or it will never fix. So 21% of women will take home less. Women will take home 21% less in terms of their pension and retirement. You have to ask yourself, why is that? And I actually had this discussion again with one of my daughters and her friends. I said, do you know that when you start working, you need to ask if you and your male counterpart that's coming out of university and coming into the workplace are being paid the same. It's like, but mommy, if I'm smarter and I've gotten better marks and we're going to be doing the same job, I should be. I said, you should. But it doesn't happen, and it hasn't happened for the past many years. So you actually, because if you don't do that, you go in and structurally you start at a different point. I mean, there are additional examples that we can give, but there are also structural deficits in terms of how we think about investments later on. Women are more conservative, rightfully so, because a lot of them bear the responsibility for families. So as they get into the later life, they take more conservative portfolios for investments while men continue to be bullish. And again, that creates a structural deficit. So I think for our kids, the first thing to do is just to talk about the stuff. What is the opportunity? What should you look out for? Talk about savings. What do savings look like? What's an ETF? How can you do it today? Why not put your money just in a savings account? And why should you look at another vehicle? These kids understand and they have access, but we simply don't do it with girl children, and we usually do it with boy children. So for me, I want to start by just having the right conversations.
Nonku, we've reached the point where we normally at this point ask, what do you do for fun? And there's a sort of rule that you're not allowed to just jog, okay?
Oh, but I work at a health company, so jog is what I do.
You can cycle. So you can jog, but you have to do something else. I don't know. Do you play the violin or something?
No, but Stephen, I'll tell you my best thing. My best thing is travel. And it's not travel because every 6 months or at the end of the year, big travel. I usually say, and this is something that I've gotten my fiance into, like try once a month to really unplug. So go to a place where you're no longer somebody's mom or boss, and really just plug into something different, something that re-energizes. It could be in nature, it could be by the ocean, and we do that quite often. And I just find that it completely revives me, and I'm ready to take on the next week, the next month, the next couple of months.
Do you make sure that your cell phone is, I don't know, locked away somewhere?
No, that is not a possibility. But I'm actually quite good with I'm not a person who's often on their phone just scrolling social media. So I'm actually quite good with that. But, you know, when you're a mom and you are a CEO and things could happen. So you need to always be available. But I'll walk the beach in Kenton. My daughter now goes to Grahamstown. It's just the most amazing thing. It's a small little town. The only thing you can do is go to a small little restaurant, buy a coffee and walk the beach. And, you know, that can do wonders for somebody's mind, even just for a weekend.
So beach rather than the bush?
Definitely beach rather than bush.
Yeah, I know. I think you and I have a lot more
I
in
can't
common.
chase a lion for 2 hours. Spotting is not for me.
You might catch it. Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting to talk about that. Best place you've ever been to?
I have a soft spot for Bali. It, for me, is truly eat, love, pray. And actually, I was giving a colleague some advice around how to travel Bali, but I've done the city, I've done the mountains, I've done just the coast. It's just, I find it an incredible place. And the people are just, there are people that remind me when you know what fuels your country. And you treat me so well that I want to come back over and over again. So I've been multiple times.
Nonku, thank you. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Stephen. It was such a fabulous discussion. Thank you so much.
So much more we could have talked about. Nonku Peche is the CEO at Discovery Corporate and Employee Benefits, and your Money Show Shapeshifter this evening.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA Corporate and Investment Banking, turning intent into execution. That's how ABSA are invested in Africa's energy future.
Well, U.S. markets been positive most of the day, turning a bit mixed now. The Dow Jones is up 0.91%. The Nasdaq is down 0.45%. And the S&P 500 is up 0.06%. So just turning a little negative for the moment. There have been very high valuations lately around AI. Also, of course, just watching the situation in the Middle East very, very closely. We'll be back tomorrow. Don't forget, Investment School with you tomorrow. A lot to look forward to. Good evening. It's 8 o'clock. Tomorrow, don't forget Investment School with you tomorrow. A lot to look forward to. Good evening. It's 8 o'clock.